Hello, friends. I am back for my 2-week check-in. I wanted to touch on the books that I have finished and started in the past 2 weeks. I feel like I have been making wonderful progress in books, and I'm so ecstatic to share with you what I've been reading. So let's get into it. In the last check-in video, I talked about Morning Star by Carl Nove Nosgard. Probably saying that wrong. This is a translated fiction, translated from the Swedish. It takes place in Norway or Sweden, I believe. This is a very literary book, and I am sad to say that I have decided to DNF it. Now, this is a soft DNF. I just think that it was a little bit slow for what I've been leaning towards wanting to read lately. And as I mentioned before, this book is told from multiple POVs, and a lot of it is very mundane and very slow paced. There is a little bit of metaphysical, fantastical elements to the story because there is this morning star that appears in the sky, and all of these odd, weird things begin to happen. They're not very overdone. They're very kind of soft and muted things that aren't necessarily horrific or, I don't know, ominous, but they are just odd, just out of the ordinary. And I think that my main issue with this, besides the fact that it is a slow, kind of meandering tale, is that some of these perspectives I really just did not care for. I didn't like the characters. I wasn't interested in their story. And I felt like the characters that I didn't like, that I wasn't interested in, actually had the longest chapters. So I was beginning to get a little bit frustrated with this because the characters, the POVs that I really wanted to hear from, they weren't there enough on the page. I think I made it over the 50% mark and just decided to not continue for now, just put it aside and hopefully come back to it later on when I'm in a more slow-paced mood and want something a little bit more literary. So yeah, I do think that the author does use these POVs to delve into some complex topics from differing perspectives. And so like I said, it is a good book. It is interesting and it does have interesting characters and it is pretty original. But like I said, I just feel like wrong time, wrong book. So I did sit this one aside. The next thing that I also mentioned in the previous video was a audiobook that I was listening to, which was Taste by Stanley Tucci. I did finish this, and I am of the mind that I don't want to rate nonfiction books, especially memoirs and things of that nature, because it is such a personal thing for these people that write this, and I don't feel like it really deserves to be rated on my classic rating scale, such as plot and character. But I will say that I highly enjoyed this book. I found it very witty, very charming. It was just really, really good. I found myself so interested and gripped by his story. Stanley Tucci is an actor, has done the Netflix series called Searching for Italy. In this book, it's very similar, in which he very much deals with his Italian heritage and food and cooking and his family traditions. Something that I did not expect when reading this book was how personal he gets and talks about some of the struggles that he's faced in recent years. One of those things being cancer. His wife had previously died from cancer, if you didn't know. His first wife, she had breast cancer. He did remarry and have more children, but then he found himself dealing with cancer. And it was cancer of the tongue. This book is aptly named Taste because it really talks about the fact that he lost his taste and he wasn't able to eat for a long period of time when he was struggling with this disease. But he talks about it in such a witty and delightful way. He delves into the importance of friendship and food and how food can bring people together. It's that mechanism that people sit around the table and bond over meals. He dwells on the food topic, and I loved it because I love Italy, I love food, and I loved Stanley Tucci. I think he's such a great actor, really an underrated actor, and his personality is just Highly recommend this book. I did mention though that I recommend picking up the hard copy, paperback, or what have you, because there are recipes, abundance of recipes in this book that are really great. Definitely should be taken advantage of. The next book that I completed was Carpathians by Paul Dixon. I ended up giving this book 4 stars. This is a sci-fi, is set in the far future in which humanity has colonized other planets. Mars being one of them. They also have figured out the way to enhance human lifespan and human knowledge. There are 3 big corporations that run the show. One of these corporations has a human that they have enhanced, and they are on a mission to this planet, and they find that it is a Holocaust world, basically a world that was inhabited by humans or sentient species at some point in the distant past. They ruined the planet with some nuclear holocaust. And one of the things that one of these enhanced humans finds is an artifact. And there's this big mystery and this big rush to be the first person to discover what this artifact means, what secrets it holds. It was a really fun ride. It's pretty fast paced. I really loved some of the unique planets that are discussed, some of the unique species that are brought up. It was a really great adventure. One of my only gripes with this story is that a lot of the character voices didn't feel very distinct to me. I thought that if they had not been told who was speaking and given context, you may not have been able to differentiate between the characters, because they, like I said, they just didn't really utilize a lot of those devices that make the distinction between characters. Maybe one character has the habit of twirling their hair or biting their lip, or I don't know, things like that. Little characteristics, little quirks that make people individuals, and also ways of speaking, things that make us individualized. We can differentiate between these people from those things. I didn't really feel a lot of those in this story, and so I would have liked a little bit more of that. But I do feel like each character, each perspective that is given in this story does have its purpose and really does offer you a full perspective, a full picture of what is happening in unique ways, because you have a researcher. She has spent her life studying the evolutionary process of humans as well as other species and beings, and she offers a lot of knowledge in that area. Then you have your captain, you have your psychologist, you have all these different perspectives that really add to the flavor of the story and give you, like I said, a full picture. And so I thought it was really great. It was about 520 pages. I feel like it was really accessible, really easy to read. It wasn't heavy on the science jargon. It definitely had a little bit in there, but I didn't feel like it was overdone or dry or hard to understand. I felt it was really easy to read and digestible, and I had a really great time with it. Highly recommend, 4 stars. Next, I picked up The Curse of Dragontail Island. This was a book sent to me by the author for me to read and review. I have not made much progress on this. I am about 20% of the way in, and I do think that it is a fun book. This is a fantasy that takes place a lot of the time on the sea. There's pirates and ogres and gnomes, all of these fun, fantastical characters, and it's setting you up in this adventure, and so it seems like it's going to be a really fun ride. I just have been reading other things that have pulled my attention away, and I haven't been focusing on that. I will make progress on this at some point and really get to it. I think that from what I've read so far, the author is really good at providing you with that fun, piratey dialogue, and it seems funny, has a lot of good banter and some really enchanting settings. I do plan on continuing with this at some point. I am just in the middle of other things that have been, like I said, just really kind of taking over my bandwidth. The next thing I picked up was Dreams of the Dying, and this is by Nicholas Lietzu, I believe. I did pick this up because Books with Brittany decided to do a buddy read, although my girl flew through this book before anybody else could even pick it up. This was a reread for her. This is a fantasy book. It is almost a fantasy / horror book because there are some elements to this that really are creepy and can be described as horrific. This takes place in a world which there are dimensionalists, basically people that have the ability to travel into different layers of reality in which they can control different aspects of life. Like some people are able to heal and some people are necromancers, and then there are others who are able to walk in other people's dreams. Our main character has the unfortunate curse of seeing dead people in his dreams or in these kind of parallel dimensions. And so he's dealing with this element, this haunting thing, all the while he's trying to help one of the higher ups of this world. He has fallen into a coma and his wife has brought in our main character and this other healer to try and figure out what is going on with him. All of these other players come involved, and it has really just been a pretty wild ride. Like I said, there is dream walking, there is healers and necromancy. There's a lot of talk around the balance of power and how certain people in positions of power take advantage of that and make the poor poorer. And how do you know when you've gone too far? How do you know when you're taking advantage of your power, leaving these poor people to suffer? Basically, the weak and the poor making the rich and the powerful richer and more powerful. You know, where is that line? And where do you define when you've gone too far and when you're using your power for evil instead of good? Again, I really am enjoying this book, but I do think one of my gripes, one of my least favorite parts is some of the character interactions feel a little bit unnatural. I cringe when it happens just because it doesn't feel right, as well as some of the dialogue doesn't seem fitting to the characters that have been described at that point. A shut-off person, a person that doesn't really want to open up to people and has that kind of wall up, but yet there's this interaction with this other character in which he's saying some really weird, like gushy things, and it just, to me, just doesn't feel like it fits. That's my perspective. That's how I feel about it. It doesn't make me not want to read the book. Obviously, I am about 60% through at this point and really enjoying it. I think that the action scenes are really great. I really, really love the dream walking sequences and those other dimensions that you get to see. That part's really fun. So that unique magic system has really been working for me. So like I said, I am about 60% of the way through and really enjoying this so far. I also picked up another audiobook or started listening to another audiobook. I picked up Dead Wake by Erik Larson. This is all about the Lusitania, which was a passenger ship back in the early 1900s, and it also takes place during the start of the First World War. I have not really made it very far into this at all. It's a really large book, and if you have read anything by Erik Larson before, you know that he gives a very, very detailed portrayal of the time period and the key people of that time period, and a lot of it comes off as very dry. At least that's my perspective so far. And this is my first book that I've read by Erik Larson. I had previously picked up Devil in the White City and did not make it very far because, again, it is very detailed. I mean, very detailed. Things that you wouldn't think are relevant, he is giving you backstory on, like the captain's history and how he became a captain, all his prior ships that he was on, his father's job. You also get information on the president of the US at the time and his struggles with his wife passing, and a lot of detail. And I'm sure that it comes full circle and is interesting and pertinent to the story. But at this time, I'm really glad that I'm listening to it on audiobook, because if I was reading this, I would have not continued. I would have put it down. I don't know. It's much more, I think, consumable in that manner, in my perspective. So anyway, I will be continuing with that. It is a loan from the library. I have 2 weeks, so hopefully I will finish it in time. I've only been listening to it when I drive, so about 20-minute drive to work each day to and from, so we'll see. And then I have also picked up Coffin Moon by Eric. Keith Roth. Don't know where I got Eric from. And I am only about 50 or 60 pages into this, but really, really enjoying it. His writing is chef's kiss. You really get the nitty gritty of these characters. You really get their backstory and their emotional traumas and their physical traumas and their relationship. You really feel that intensity. And so when things start to go wrong, things are just now starting to go wrong, you really feel that sense of shit. That really, he is portraying that depth of character and that emotional bond in such a great way. So far, his writing is really great. I'm really enjoying it. I've heard great things about this book. I am reading my Broken Binding edition. I will keep you posted on how that goes. Hopefully, I will finish it soon and have a wrap up for it in the next video. But that's it. Those are the things that I have read in the past 2 weeks and how I felt about them. I would love to hear your take on any of these if you have read them, and I would love to know what you're reading. So drop me a comment down below and let's catch up. Until then, happy reading, friends. Bye!